small. Right, I'm Lucienne Roberts. I run a studio in London called Lucienne Roberts Plus, and I'm one half of Graphic Design and.
And I'm Rebecca Wright. I'm Programme Director of Graphic Communication Design at Central St Martin's. And I'm the other half of Graphic Design and I'm the tall one, and Lucy's the small one. I'm the optimist, and Lucy's
I'm the
the
pessimist.
And that's one of the things we think makes us work, and it's one of the things that kind of informs how we work and how we got to Can Graphic Design Save Your Life?
So by way of just a little bit of context, when I left college, I was very idealistic. I still am, actually, even for a pessimist. And I believe that graphic design can make the world a better place. And I've always focused, I think, on work that I hope does just that as a contribution. As part of that investigation, I've done quite a lot of writing. And I suppose the key book that I've written is called Good, and it's all about ethics and graphic design. And that's where Becky comes in.
So one of the ways that Lucy and I connected was that she asked me to do some writing for some books that she was doing. And I don't think I realized I could write. And I also didn't realize that there would be this connection in terms of an interest in subject matter. So not just what graphic design is, but more about its role and position in the world and its value.
So a lot of the work that my studio does now is exhibition related, and we've worked on 3 projects for Wellcome Collection before, and the Wellcome Collection is all about medicine and health, and the exhibition spaces, the remit of those is really to help the public understand more about medicine and health. So we had a bit of an in with Wellcome Collection, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. But first of all, we'll talk to you about Graphic Design and the whole idea behind that.
So we felt that there was quite a lot of publishing by graphic designers for other graphic designers, and we didn't need more of it. And we didn't need more glossy coffee table books about graphic design. And what we really needed, and what we couldn't see in the world of publishing around graphic design, was books that demonstrated what graphic design does, not just what it looks like or who it's appealing to, but how it functions and the value that it brings.
So our first books, we call Graphic Design and because you can always add a subject at the end.
Any subject, every subject.
Because graphic design is about everything else, isn't it? So we had a graphic design and literature book, we've done maths, we've done social science, we've actually done religion as well. But obviously for us, a key subject would be health. Hence, Can Graphic Design Save Your Life?
And actually, this title was really key to the project. It wasn't the title that we started working with. We actually had Hearts and Minds, I think, as our working title. But really quickly, we realized that we wanted a show that would appeal to non-designers, because this is one of our missions as Graphic Design and that we make work that kind of demonstrates the value of graphic design beyond our own discipline. And we knew we needed a title that would invite people in and that would be provocative. And we were delighted that Wellcome went for this, because it's kind of bold and it lays its cards on the table. We're making a case for graphic design, but we're talking about graphics. We're not hiding that. We're trying to promote that.
So along with the exhibition, we've also published a book, but we're going to be talking primarily about the show.
And one of the great things about Wellcome is that it has a remarkable archive. So we knew we wanted to partner with Wellcome because we get access to this library, this archive, this museum of ephemera and whole kind of catalogues of graphic design that weren't necessarily valued for what their graphic design quality was. It was because it was a marker of a particular kind of epidemic or illness or treatment. So we were like kids in a sweet shop when we got into the archive.
We worked, my studio produced the graphics for the show, and we worked with Universal Design Studio who did the 3D. And one of the key ideas behind the design was that each section, when viewed in plan, this is the model of the show, is a symbol for the content of that particular section. So we're going to kind of walk you through the exhibition now.
And I think it's worth saying that when we went into the archives at Wellcome, and we had an idea of the kind of things we were looking for, but we were overwhelmed by what we found. So one of the big challenges in curating the show was deciding what we'd leave out and what we wouldn't include, and to have a really clear rationale for what would make it in. And the sections provided a framework for us. So we spent a lot of sessions with big sheets of newsprint, kind of working through different options and alternatives of sections and section titles.
So the show design includes this super graphic, which is the title of the show, and it's really there to remind visitors that that's the question we're asking, and that they should look at each project against that question. They should ask that question of each project. So anyway, that's a view one way into the space, and here's another. But we're going to focus now on a few key projects. So starting with our first section, which is Persuasion, and it looks like a cigarette when viewed from above, and that's because it's all about smoking.
And smoking was important because it's us holding our hands up and saying, as graphic designers, we're as culpable in the proliferation of disease through our work to promote smoking as we are in the battle against it. And it felt really important to be clear about that from the start.
But inevitably, one of the key exhibits in this section is the design of the unbranded cigarette packet, first introduced in Australia in 2012, but of course now here too.
And one of the things we wanted to kind of reveal about this is that they're unbranded, but they're still designed. The unbranding is a design kind of set of restrictions, and that includes the background color. So it's not just the font or the fact that you have to use lowercase for any information on the pack apart from the health warnings, but it's also the background color. And this was decided by a kind of piece of market research where the public were invited to decide which the least appealing color would be to feature on a cigarette packet. And in case you were wondering, it's Pantone 448C.
The exhibition also features, as does the book, a set of stamps, anti-smoking stamps, produced throughout the world, apart from, most notably, the UK and the USA. And what's interesting about those is actually what they tell you about different regions, different graphic languages that are used throughout the world, and also images that might repeat but are interpreted in many and varied ways.
And I think one of the things that was a kind of delight in terms of the research was then discovering pieces of graphic design that were kind of real feats of labor. This is an amazing project, which is a tobacco atlas, which is published, designed by an American design studio, but the feat of information design and kind of statistical interpretation to present data, which is really compelling in terms of the battle against the smoking lobby.
So this was designed by a language department. Every now and again, you'll see in our slides that there are little quotes from people at the bottom, and that's because in our book, we asked all our designers to answer the question, can graphic design save your life? So there are a few quotes from them included. The next section is education, which looks like a question mark when viewed from above. Here's a view into the space again.
And this really focused on looking at the body, the way in which graphic design and illustration have been used to educate and inform about the body.
So we include a key exhibit for us, which was Fritz Kahn's poster from the 1920s, where the body is represented like a machine. So it's a sort of metaphor with lots of little people inside doing things.
And we included this amazing publication called Planned Parenthood, which was a comic book that was part of the contraception message produced in the States in 1959, called Escape from Fear.
And it's all about a wife saying, darling, darling, I love you, but I don't want to be pregnant. And here's just a few spreads from the book that just give you an idea of some of the range of the content. Our hospitalization section obviously looks at hospitals. It includes work that's focused on the interiors of hospitals. We look at the design of ambulances, the Battenberg pattern that's used on the side of them. But this is probably the most notable project that we include, I think.
So this is worth us just pausing on, because what we wanted to do by asking a question, can graphic design save your life, we needed to present a compelling case so that the audience would walk away saying, yes, it can. And this was one project we felt did that because it had evidence. So you may know of this project. It's by Pearson Lloyd, a design studio who are predominantly around product design, actually, and interiors. But they answered a design call from the Design Council and the Department of Health to see if design could be used to reduce the incidence of violence in A&E departments in hospitals in the UK. And their research led them to understand that the big issue, the big cause of the frustration which led to the anger, which led to violence, was a lack of information at timely points in your journey. And they provided a system of information, which was basically graphic design. And by piloting that in 2 UK hospitals for a year, the research found that violent incidents reduced by 50%, 50, which is absolutely significant.
We also include projects by students. This was a student MA project looking at how to depict pain. And this shows some spreads from the book that also are all about hospitals.
There are over 200 objects in the exhibition, so we can't talk about all of them.
So we have to speak really, really quickly now because we're at 10 minutes already. So, medication. This is probably my favourite section. It looks at the design around pharmaceuticals. Very loaded. Obviously, we all know pharmaceutical companies make lots of money. There are ethical issues there. But obviously, we include work produced by Geigy from the 50s and 60s, which had a huge influence on me personally. Actually, I cried when that went into the case, that book.
She did.
But because it was so beautiful. But I thought that, but actually the pharmaceuticals, what's interesting is that to depict what's in those packets clearly often requires a degree of abstraction because we can't see how medicines work. And that's probably why it's played into a lot of graphic designers' strengths. This book also made me quite teary. This is about an antidepressant, interestingly called Nobrium. But it's, again, a work of real beauty. But, it's loaded because it was produced by Roche, quite a large pharmaceutical company. And we also look at corporate identity, most noticeably here with Tiva, which is an Israeli company, where we explain the use of pictograms and color coding, and we show the corporate identity manual, which for the public, the general public visiting the exhibition, they have no idea that designers can be such control freaks.
Now, Contagion was my favourite section, and that was because it was looking at the role of graphic design in relation to epidemics. So it's public health in a really direct way. And one of the key pieces that we built this section around was the Don't Die of Ignorance campaign from the 80s. Probably something that you only know from the history books, but Lucy and I lived that period, and it really brought back the kind of impact of a campaign that was incredibly bold at communicating a public health message. And it's still, I think, the only public health campaign which has involved leafleting every household in the UK, which is an interesting thing.
And one of the key exhibits for us is there's a mini gravestone, which was used as a prop in one of the photography shoots, which the designer still had in his garden.
And that sense of discovery was also, it came through in some surprising ways. So this is some more examples from the Contagion section, but just looking at the condoms there, we discovered that although there was an amazing collection in the Wellcome archive, there weren't very many contemporary examples or really early examples, and we ended up buying a lot on eBay, including a World War II army ration condom with the seller kindly included a note saying not for use.
So the last section in the show is called Provocation, and it's about design that is intended to provoke a very particular reaction, and it looked like an exclamation mark when viewed from above. Probably the project that I found most touching actually was this book, which was written and designed and all the images drawn by Katie Green, and it was telling her own story of anorexia. And her quote is the most poignant, really, in terms of the book, because when we ask, can graphic design save your life, she says that doing the book itself helped save her life.
And we thought we should end on an image that made us smile. And this is partly not just because of what the image is, but of the designer's ingenuity. So you see here, the round breasts are part of an image from a Swedish cancer charity who did an online video about checking your breasts. And Facebook spotted this and censored the round breast image.
So it was taken down.
And the designer's response was to make the breast square. And that passed the test. But cleverly, of course, this also gave great exposure, pun intended, to the whole kind of campaign. And I think that's one of the things that we learned, that designers aren't just kind of involved in the subtlety of message and the kind of the sophistication of identifying audiences and a way of communicating the message. They're really playful, they're really clever, and they deal with this unexpected relationship you get with any audience of you intend one thing and you get a response that's perhaps unpredictable.
So we believe graphic design can save your life. Thank you.
Thank you.